Great. Thank you. Thank you for joining and welcome to session two of the Water in Communication series. Really appreciate that you've joined early enough. And we're excited, very excited for today's session. As we begin, I want to say that please, as you see in the charts, rename your, make sure your account is showing your proper name. And you could also add English, Spanish, or Arabic based on your preferred language, and that way it helps us to coordinate with you. You're muted when you join in, so please stay muted. And now we want to have a feel of who is joining us. We have about 56 people joining us. Great. So yes, welcome. I see some of you are renaming yourselves with your prefix in front. That is great. Like I said, please stay muted except during the practical session when we need you to engage. We appreciate that. Turn on your cameras if you can. That will be nice. And this is time when you introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know, where are you joining us from today? We want to have a feel of who and who is in the room with us. 61 of you are in already. Where are you joining us from today? If you could just put your name and where you're joining us, that will be nice as we begin. Lovely. Eliana from Argentina, welcome. Enric from Sweden, Miami, from the UK, Linda is joining us. Scotland, Afghanistan, Indonesia, Colombia, Nigeria, Sweden, yes, Denmark, and welcome indeed. Australia, oh, thank you. Quite a number of people joining from different parts of the world. So good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from today. And if you're rewatching this from the comfort of your home, welcome. We appreciate that. Thank you all for joining us. We're very glad to have you join us on the second session for Water in Communications 2026. My name is Sheifumi Adebote, and I'm your host for Water in Communications 2026, as well as the programs lead. Before we go any further, if you have not already done that, please go all the way down, or if you click more on your Zoom, you'll find the globe icon with the interpretation, just like you see on the screen that we're sharing. And there you can choose your preferred language. The session is being interpreted live in Spanish and Arabic. And I want to say gracias, shukran, thank you to our friends at Interprefy for making that possible. I mentioned earlier that you rename yourself. I guess that is pretty easy. But as you see also in the next slide, just put your language in front. It helps us to put you in the right room or for people to network with you even easy. Good. I see some comments in the chat about the interpretation sound, and I'm sure that we will work on that as we go along. Thank you for flagging that. Other house rules before we go, for those that are just joining, especially if it's your first time joining, please stay muted when you join. And you only unmute when you are asked to. We encourage that you use the chat to introduce yourself, ask your questions, or share ideas if you want. And yes, how can we know you're smiling on the other end if you don't turn on your camera? So please, if you can, we would love to see your beautiful faces. So feel free to turn on your cameras also. Greetings from India, from Bangladesh. Great, thank you. And this is where I officially say welcome. Welcome everyone to the second session of the Water in Communications 2026 webinar series. For those joining for the first time, we're very glad that you found this or that this found you, either ways. And hold your breath because there's quite a lot to learn today. I see some new faces, I see some known faces, but also some new names and faces here, and we're very excited to have you all. But just to give a simple brief, the Water in Communications is now in the 6th year, and over the last 6 years, we've trained over 3,500 journalists and communicators. This year, the theme is communicating water for collective action, and you are one of about 1,200 people from over 100 countries that have signed up to be a part of it this year. The session will run every Tuesdays and Thursdays throughout the month of June up until June 25th. So we hope that you will join us at this exact time. It's 14 o'clock CEST, Stockholm time. Please convert to your respective time zones, sync it with your calendars, and that way you will not miss any of the sessions. At the end of the session of the workshop series, we're going to award certificates to those of you who have been able to participate at least 75%. And that's 6 out of the 8 sessions. So we do encourage you to join as much as you can. And then we'll make sure you get certificates at the end of the series. Many thanks to Grundfos Foundation, whose partnership makes it possible for SIWI, the Stockholm International Water Institute, to organize the Water and Communication series over the last 6 years, and that's for free. So we're really grateful to the Grundfos Foundation for that. If you are yet to check out the program for World Water Week, please do that. I'll give you a few seconds to scan the QR code that will show. Yes, right there. And it should lead you right to the page where you can check out the full program, and you can sign up to be part of the program online or virtually, depending on what works best for you. So please take a few moments, bring out your phone, scan, and then it leads you straight to the World Water Week website, and you can find the program. That said, let's get into the session today. Who are we? My name is Sheifumi Adebote, for those just joining. We're very glad. I'm glad to be your host and also the program lead for Water and Communication series this year. Together with me is Jesse Patson, program officer at World Water Week. And he will ensure that today's session flows smoothly, keeping an eye on the chat, but also helping with any technical issues that may arise. In the interpretation room, we have interpreters in Arabic, Spanish. So feel free to go into those rooms and follow the session. Are we ready for today? Can I see some emojis, some reactions to feel how ready we are for today's session? Yes, I see lots of thumbs up and love and celebration emojis. Great, welcome. What really makes a compelling water story? Is it the headline? Is it the language? Is it the emotions, the triggers? And what will it take to write one? What will it take to write a compelling water story? That's what we're here to learn about today. And I know you're very excited. From the lineups of speakers, I am super excited too. But before we go right in, I just want to do a very quick recap for those of you who missed the first session, or just to refresh your memory for those of you who were here on Tuesday, where Alice, Catherine, and Kundai helped us in laying a strong foundation, telling the water stories, how communication drives action. And if you missed it or you want to rewatch it, I can tell you that in a few hours from now, it will be uploaded on the YouTube World Water Week YouTube channel, and we'll send it as an email to you, so do not sweat over it. We'll send the slides and also the links to the recording in the emails. Yes, that's the answer to your question, Tatenda, asking about the presentations. What were some of the strongest takeaway? I think one thing that was repeatedly emphasized was water is life. I heard that about 5 times during that session. Water is life. Secondly, it was clear that 2026 is not business as usual. Water has moved to the center of climate, development, and governance discussions. And as journalists, as communicators, you carry that profound responsibility to follow the signals and to tell these water stories right. And the third takeaway from that, the first session, was that human-centered storytelling is non-negotiable. And today serves as a perfect bridge to take us deeper beyond storytelling. It helps us understand what makes a compelling water stories and how can we build one. I've got 3 brilliant women who will guide us through this narrative today. They will test our ethical instincts, but they'll also leave us with publishable session towards the end. As we get on with today's session, building powerful water narratives. What makes a compelling water story? First on the list, I want to make welcome and thank Linda Gwada for joining us. Linda is the head of communication at the Water Sector Trust Fund in Kenya. She has over a decade experience shaping water narratives across policy, communities, and development, working with development partners. She currently serves as the head of corporate communications at the Water Sector Trust Fund. Thank you for joining us, Linda, and welcome. Up next is Sarah Bitrus Nuhu, communication specialist at WaterAid Nigeria. Sarah has led digital communications for MSF, WaterAid, and other developments into people-centered stories. Sarah has also built expertise in communications for development using storytelling, digital media, but also audience engagement in amplifying issues relating to humanitarian action and development. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. We're very excited to have you with us. And lastly, but not the least, is Sherine El-Wattar, Science Network Officer for the IPCC. And IPCC is an intergovernmental panel on climate change, if I recall right. And there's this working group Sherine belongs to. She's a Science Network Officer with the IPCC Working Group too. And our work focuses on the intersections of climate adaptation, water governance, and the science policy interface across the Middle East, East Africa, and Europe. Thank you so much for joining us, Sharon. Let's get into the conversation today. First, we'll hear from Sharon, and then will be Sarah. They will make presentations for about 10 minutes, after which we will get our hands wet as Linda takes us through a practical session and a simulation crisis that will, a crisis simulation practical session, if we put it that way, that will come thereafter. But we'll begin first with Sherine El-Wattar. Sharon, the floor is yours. Welcome again.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Am I visible? I am so happy to see so many people joining this session. So if my voice is clear, a thumbs up would be great. I see Anne thumbsing up, so thank you for that. Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be with you today because it makes me reflect on my own journey to be able to join you all. Of course, thank you very much for the invitation to join you. My presentation is going to be about a concept that is very dear to my heart. It's about the concept of dear waters, and I will share with you what is that concept and where did it come from. But since all of this is about communications for water, I had to share with you the personal thought process that made me realize that the core of any water communication is actually, in my opinion, reminding us of why we care about water. Why do we like it? And it's not about just, like water as a concept, but why do we like beaches? Why do we like fresh water in the morning to drink? Why do we like the rain when it's warm? Why do we like to go to the top of icy mountains or see snow in countries with snow? And why do we find it very interesting when wells are dug and then you can see water coming out, or we travel miles and miles to see spring water to swim in or to see the medicinal properties? When we look at water beyond just it being water, a lot of its identity gets clear. But before I delve deep into that, I would like to introduce myself. Shay already did that great, but I would like to follow up with saying that I am all of my life I've been working with water. So I am an engineer, a civil engineer, but specialized in water engineering. And then my master's was in water governance and management from IHE Delft in the Netherlands. And I've been working constantly in the field of water and environment ever since I graduated. So for now, I think I'm approaching the 10-year mark, which is surprising to be a professional in this field. And right now with the IPCC, with my role as a Science Network Officer, I am responsible as a technical support unit focal point for the chapter on water that will be published with the 2029 IPCC report. So I'm still very engaged. Water is kind of like my compass wherever I go, and I do believe that it is the connector with everything you do. Next slide, please. So I will be keeping it very simple with us in this conversation because I'm really looking forward to how the interactive part will come up. But before, I wanted us to think about, before we tell stories, what is water to us? And that was why my introduction was so, thinking about memories about beaches and rivers and boat rides potentially. And, the moment in some communities, the moment we see our mom walking to get some water for us from the nearest well, or when we find an animal in a desert, stopping by a small puddle in the sand to drink some water. And, water really means a lot to us. And it's not only about the H2O as a concept, it's part of our daily life. And it is a human nature to take things for granted that we see all the time. And I do believe that we take water for granted a lot. And the secret for communications and for actually effective behavior change, in my opinion, goes back to reminding ourselves of the deeper connection we have with water, and not just put it in the distant, the distant concept of it being a scientific term. Because once you put it there, there is this understanding or implicit conclusion that, oh, if it's scientific, if I am not a scientist, or if I don't feel like a strong scientist, I will not address this. I cannot talk about water. But what I do as Shireen and all of my work and in my life in general, what I'm trying to say is that all of us are water experts, because all of us are dealing with it every single day. And so if we want to tell stories about water, we really need to see how we see water through our own eyes. During my master's 4 years ago or something, I did this very interesting research about the perception of water. And I was always met with I'm sure you heard this as well. A lot of times when we want to influence behavior for better climate behavior or water use behavior, we say, let's raise awareness. That is the go-to. And communications are usually used to raise the awareness. But there was a research study that was very interesting to me that actually challenged this. They said that raising the awareness does not trigger behavior change. For you to actually trigger the change of people, you have to make them connect to what we call the hedonic characteristics or the hedonic perspectives of something. And what is hedonic? It is, you can see the definition of it at the bottom of my slide. It is anything that is motivated by the pleasure, enjoyment, or avoidance of pain. So the theory of that research was saying, if I talk to people about how they connect their childhoods with the summer vacation with their families, with good feelings, or I connect it with, unfortunately, also the reality that exists when our moms or our sisters had to walk for kilometers to get water because that is the only spot where they can pick up water for us. And it brings us feelings of pain, of the exhaustion of that memory. These things are more possible to trigger a behavior change inside me than just reading, an article that is so disconnected from this reality, or reading a video that's just telling me, change your behavior, we need to save water, water is scarce, because we get desensitized towards this information. Um, and and that is why, from when I did the research among the water experts in my university, all of us were doing a master's in water management. So in essence, you cannot get more scientific awareness higher than that. But when I talked to them, most of them were not doing any water, conservation behavior. Like they didn't. It was so disconnected from their scientific knowledge of water. They had them like it was like thinking about how to change your water behavior was separate from you as a water scientist, was separate from you as a human being. And I found that very strange, because there is no separation of all of your identities when you are brushing your teeth in the morning, or when you're taking a shower, or when you're using the toilet, or when you're cooking, things that you're using water for every single day. And that is why I raise questions for you that we can discuss later. And you can also write your thoughts about this in the chat. I would love to hear your reflections. Can information change behavior if it doesn't change how we feel? Like, think about it as a person, as your own person. Can it really change that? Because I'm sure that we get a lot of information at the moment, especially with social media. We are getting, very high levels of misinformation and a lot of information beyond our capacity. We are getting information and knowledge saturation. So if we really want people to listen to the concepts of water and to really inspire their behavior change and their perception change, and to internalize and accept water stories, can only information do that without connecting to their emotions? And if so, what kind of information can trigger that? That is also an open question to the communication lists in the room. The second question was, okay, then, if when we decide to talk about stories and share stories, what stories can actually help transform water from just an abstract resource that we think about, that just comes from the faucet in the morning, into something that people genuinely care about? Because I see here a comment that anger, for example, is a very powerful trigger on social media, but there is also a saturation to anger because not everybody will get angry. The world is a difficult place anyway. And sometimes, like we cannot depend on only one emotion. There are so many different emotions that water can get in us. There are communities that will think of water as refreshing, a positive memory, happy childhood. Others will think of it as exposure to difficulties, as gender bias and injustice, as health issues, as mourning and death sometimes. Some others think of fear if they are living in an environment filled with flooding and with, unexpected reactions and unexpected exposure to water in general. So water is really, like there's so many different ways. Anger can work with certain communities depending on their context, but there are also other emotions that can trigger reaction. But anyway, I see a discussion in the chat. I would love to see how it evolves, and we can also, like see in the questions and answers, if any. The second and last slide, please, with my eye on the clock. So that is why I felt dearly, one day I just woke up and I was like, I think that water is very dear. And then I felt like water was not the right term. I felt like waters made more sense to me because there's so much of types of water in the world, waters of rain, of flooding, of rivers, of seas, of underground, what comes from the faucet in your kitchen or your bathroom, what is in your bottled water, what you find in coffee, what you find in food, the water carried by vegetables and fruits. So I just felt like waters was better for me to use, and that it is dear. So I started using dear waters all the time. And it is actually, I'm working on a personal initiative that should be launching within the year. But I do recommend that we have this, to use the lens of dear waters. How about we look at waters as if they are dear to us, as if they are dear to us like we think of our friends, and as people who communicate, what if we speak to, we speak to water and we speak to the stories of water as if we are speaking about someone we care about, or about someone we want people to know, that we know intimately. What if we move away from the reports, the indicators, the policies, the climate projects? Not that I'm belittling them, of course, they are incredibly important. In no way am I dismissing them, but I'm saying that if they are mixed with elements of memory, with the sense of identity we draw from water, with the sense of culture we have with water, with the sense of belonging. I am Egyptian. I am very proud of my proximity with the Nile, but that is also the same for all of the countries in the Nile Basin. This keeps us together. This keeps us united, a common sense of identity. That is very important, that we can draw from that. The provision of water to me, how did I live with water being scarce or being abundant? Because we do know that there are countries that lived in very dry areas, so they have a very different relationship to water than others that did not. When I was in my master's, I remember a colleague that said they found it, my master's was in the Netherlands, so they told me that they found it disturbing that they could take showers more than 30 and actually more than 10 minutes. And they used to get angry at their roommate because they used to take 30-minute showers. And it triggered them because back home they did not have water enough. So for them, anything more than 10 minutes was deeply triggering because they felt like it dismissed the reality that the people from their countries live. So it really, really runs deep. And if we decide to talk stories about water, we have to acknowledge all of these realities. We have to acknowledge all of the differences, and all of them have space. Why? It's because the stories that we choose to tell and the stories that we choose not to tell, they shape how people understand water, and they shape how they empathize with it and what actions we are willing to support. If we only acknowledge realities where water is abundant, we will completely dismiss the realities where people struggle to access water. When we also dismiss the people who can live in waters in environments that are desert, that they are already used to having a dry climate, and we try to force on them an abundant mindset to a reality they will never live in, that is also not very balanced. And so that is why we need to listen to the people, also educate ourselves about the different realities, and say the stories, all of the stories, so that it could be as balanced as possible, with empathy and of course with respect to these realities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sherine. Thank you. Thank you. Short and sweet. You leave us with the question, are water dear to us? And I see in the chats, it's been very engaging with people expressing what they feel and the emotions that, water, the lack of it or the presence of it triggers. Thank you so much. I hope that we'll be able to have time for a few questions. So if you have questions for Sherine, please just put them in the chat and we will take them after Sarah's presentation. This is where I welcome Sarah. Sarah, thank you for joining us again. WaterAid is a strong brand when it comes to water and how we tell water stories across the world. And as the communication officer or communication specialist, you are no stranger to telling compelling water stories and how it drives action. So tell us more. We're curious to hear. Sarah, the floor is yours. Yeah, Sarah, I think we'll have to come back to you. It's sounding really, really muffled, but we'll come back to you after Linda's presentation. Linda, can we welcome you for your presentation? And probably before you go into the practical case studies, we will take Sarah again, and then we can go into the case studies. And like I said, get our hands wet. Linda, the floor is yours.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much, Faye. I hope I'm audible.
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the great introduction. And for anyone who missed the section earlier, my name is Linda Gwada. I'm Head of Corporate Communications at Water Sector Trust Fund. And I have over a decade of experience in shaping development stories, policies, and institutional narratives that fall within the Kenyan water sector. So next slide. Yeah, so I would like to set the tone for my presentation with a short story. So in the shores of Lake Turkana, we have one of the smallest indigenous communities called the Emolobe, and they are about 1,500 tribes people from this community, which makes it one of the very smallest communities that we have. Since they're on the shores of Lake Turkana, they are facing rising lake levels that are threatening their homes and water sources, and also high fluoride exposure that is affecting their health and livelihoods. Now, through the intervention of Water Sector Trust Fund, we have been able to implement a reverse osmosis plant in this community, which is now serving 164 households with access to safe and drinking water. But as communicators, it's very key that we found ourselves communicating outputs instead of outcomes. As you have seen, I've just mentioned, 164 households now have access to safe drinking water. We'll find ourselves, as Sherine has also just pointed out, to be talking about pipelines, treatment plants. Those things do matter, but sometimes that is not what is in the minds of people. People are thinking about their health, they're thinking about their families, they're thinking about their future. These statistics do inform, but the stories do move. And that is why when we are shaping our stories, it's very important that we go beyond the pipes and projects into powerful, impactful stories. So why is it that water communication often fails? Next slide. So one of the biggest challenges, okay, next. So, and let me just continue. So one of the biggest challenges we face within our water sector as communicators is that our sector is often having outputs instead of outcomes, as I just mentioned. So we are finding ourselves talking about the pipelines, talking about the infrastructures, and all these things do matter. But most people don't wake up thinking about the infrastructure that we have. They think about their children. And next slide, please. Thank you. So what if we told our stories differently? So I just mentioned through the interventions of Water Sector Trust Fund, we had 164 households gaining access to clean water. So how do we reframe this into a powerful story? Out of the 164 households that I've just mentioned, this will easily mean 164 families drinking safe water. This will also mean women spending less time fetching water. This can also mean girls are now staying in school, or children are now exposed to fewer waterborne diseases and having greater dignity and opportunity and greater resilience in a climate vulnerable community. So we have one figure, 164 households access to water. But from 164 households, how can we be able to generate the stories that matter? So that is how we're able to tell the story differently, because infrastructure will deliver the service to the people. However, the stories are what reveal the value. Next slide. Great. So I would like to bring a perspective to what, through an African lens, how is the water story and why does it matter differently here? So according to the UN Water, over 2 billion people globally live in countries experiencing high water stress, with climate change intensifying droughts and water insecurity. And also nearly 90% of future urban growth globally will occur in Asia and Africa by 2050. Water access is also a gender issue, where women and girls are responsible for water collection in more than 70% of rural households without direct water access in developing regions. And this was actually told by The Guardian. So we'll find that Africa contributes the least to the global emissions, yet remains the regions that is the most vulnerable and facing the extreme weather events. So many African countries, they experience the climate change through water, and which is where our sector falls in. And as Sherine actually mentioned this, is that in Africa, water stories are not abstract environmental conversations, because this is what we constantly see around, but they are daily lived realities. So in my opinion, what is a water story? Next slide. So a water story is not about infrastructure. In my opinion, a water story is not about the pipelines. It is not about the treatment plants. Our story is a story of dignity, a story of health, a story of opportunity, a story of resilience, and a story of peace. So how do we refrain our African water stories? Next slide. So Africa water stories must not be told only through vulnerability, because this is what we see every day. Across the continent, we have communities are busy adopting, are busy innovating, are busy building resilience every day. We have young people leading climate advocacy. We have local organizations driving water innovations. Governments and partners are busy also investing in climate change resilience systems. But what I really want to say is Africa is not waiting to be saved, because what we are seeing right now is that communities are already building solutions. So how do we reframe our water stories? We can bring in the aspect of 3 steps, as I like to say: story of resilience, the story of innovation, and the story of community leadership. So when you're looking at resilience, what are the key factors that you can look at? Communities adapting to the climate shocks that are currently being experienced, or having locally driven water security initiatives, or climate resilient infrastructure investments. When it comes to innovation, remember, Africa is not waiting to be saved. We're already having and building our own solutions. So looking at the digital and climate smart water solutions is very key. Alternative water technologies that are key to the problems that they are personally facing, and also the data and technology for service delivery. As I've mentioned, youth-led community leadership is very key. We are having the youth coming up with climate advocacy opportunities. We are having community having their own ownership models to these water forums that they're having. And also partnerships are driving sustainable impacts. We're having donors, we are having national governments all across the world trying to build sustainable impact. And all this matters because globally, Africa water stories are connected in every international conversation that we're having. When issues of climate change are coming, Africa is at the forefront. We're having that story being told. When an issue of migration is coming, an issue of public health, all these stories always come out, and Africa is at the center of it. So what I'd like to say is the future of water communication is simply not telling people where pipelines are built. It's helping the world understand that water means human dignity, it means opportunity, it needs resilience, and also means peace. So when I'm framing, or what I want to project to everyone within our sector is, from my various experiences, that I've come up with 5 elements that when I'm telling a human impact story within the water sector, I always ensure that these factors are in. Next slide. Thank you. So 5 elements of a powerful water narrative. When we are doing a water story, it's always important to have these 5 factors being considered as you do your story. 1, humanity. We need to put people before the project. Number 2, emotion. The facts will inform, but the emotions is what will move action. Number 3, local voice. It's very important that the community must not just appear in the story. Just don't mention the community A, community B. Let them speak within your story. Then we have credibility. The data that we have from our technical reports are what strengthens the stories paired with this lived experience that I have mentioned in part number 3. And lastly, and most important, hope and action. Because people will easily disengage from any story that is about hopelessness. So our stories must always inspire possibility. Okay, next slide. So as communicators, we have one responsibility, especially within the water sector, is to tell stories with communities, not about communities. I hope that is clear. Let me repeat. As communicators, we need to tell the stories with communities, not about communities. And how do we do that? 1, we'll need to respect dignity. We'll need to avoid the victim narratives because communities are not props for our stories, ladies and gents. We need to verify facts and figures from the relevant parties and let the beneficiaries speak for themselves. We also need to showcase resilience alongside the challenges. So with this, I want to just mention that the strongest water stories do not portray people as victims, but merely portray the people as partners in change. As the slide we have here, I'd like to bring in a case study because this is something that I experienced, and this is an initiative and campaign that I personally took part in. So one of the most powerful lessons that I learned in my whole experience is that statistics alone rarely inspire action. So in the year 2019, Water Sector Trust Fund was implementing the Upscaling Basic Sanitation for the Urban Poor Program, also known as UPSAP. And through this UPSAP program, over 250,000 people gained access to safe and dignified sanitation facilities in the urban areas. Before this UPSAP came, it was a story of toilets. It was giving stories of unfair sanitation facilities. But I decided to give this story dignity. And that is why we found that before this program, the families relied on unsafe sanitation. Women and children faced safety and dignity challenges, and disease outbreaks were very common. When Waterfund submitted this impact project for consideration towards winning an award, which was under the theme of delivering inclusive and equitable services to leaving no one behind, the program was very technically strong because remember, as communicators, we are at the tail end of receiving information. We receive information after monitoring and evaluation departments have looked at the report and we have the technical impact. We have the numbers. But this report was technically strong. So, but the real story was not about the toilets. It was not about the 500 toilets built. It wasn't about the 500 access sanitation facilities. It was about dignity. And we documented the community services and paired them with these services. So what was the outcome of this? WaterFund in the year 2019 ended up being the only African winner in the 2019 United Nations Public Service Awards. It was one of our major achievements that we had, and out of 529 nominations from 72 countries, WaterFund was the only African winner. So what made this story powerful? Next slide. As I mentioned, human stories, the aspect of dignity, the aspect of health, the aspect of safety and inclusion, and supporting this with the technical evidence that we receive as communicators, the scale, the impact, the accountability, and the results. Because remember, these communities told their own stories, which supported the technical evidence that we had. And with that, stories create connection. The data creates credibility. And together, these two create action. So I want to give us a moment to ponder over what I've just mentioned. Next slide. The future of water communication is not about documenting vulnerability. It's about illuminating resilience. And our responsibility as communicators is to tell stories that show not only the challenges that the communities are facing, but also the solutions they are creating. I would like to repeat this last point. Our responsibility is to tell stories that show not only the challenges the communities are facing, but also the solutions they are creating for themselves. Okay? So with the next slide, I want us to now start getting into the practical aspects of this session, because this is a training session, and I do have some bit of experience in creating these stories. So back to my story at the very beginning, I mentioned the El Molo Bay community, where 164 households gained access to safe drinking water. This is one fact. This is one technical aspect. And this is the fact that we all experience when we get our technical reports. So when you receive this report, how do you create a story? One, we need to create a story angle. So for me, from the 164 households, I derived several storylines. So my storyline that I picked is, for the first time, families in El Molo Bay can access safe drinking water without relying on high fluoride sources. Now, we have various audiences for all our stories. We are communicators, we are policymakers, we are researchers, we are technical engineers, we are water engineers, we're water resources managers. But how you tell your story is basically framed on the audience of your story. So what I need to bring out here is, when you're developing your story, it's important for you to have your story angle. And based on your story angle and your audience, you'll be able to demarcate and know the exact storyline that you're going to pick. For example, we have the audience of journalists. For them, they'll be looking at the public interest angle. If you're a donor, they'll be looking at more of the impact part of the story. If you're looking at the policymakers, they'll be more interested and invested in resilience of the project. If it's the community, they want to feel the experience angle, the lived experience, their daily lives. So as communicators, it is important to note the various stakeholders within our audience. For me, I've demarcated just a few. But it's also important to note the story does not change. It's just the audience angle which matters. Okay? So say you'll advise, this is where we wanted to take a break to create a story. Should we bring Sarah back, or should I continue?
Yeah, let's do that very quickly. I've been chatting with Sarah, and I think she's ready to go up on her end. So, Sarah, please, let's see if we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so I have a presentation that I titled Building Powerful Water Narratives. And I'm going to talk about very briefly from reporting water issues to telling stories that actually move people to action. And I'm happy that Linda went ahead of me. She really said a lot of the things that I already wanted to say. So thank you, Linda, for that beautiful presentation. I'm just going to highlight some of the few things that I have here. And number one, I put down why stories matter more than facts alone. And I think both Linda and Sherine have already spoken about on this very extensively, how we shouldn't be reporting the things that we created or the outcomes of the pipes and the boreholes or the taps, but the stories behind all of these things. So facts inform, but stories move people. Stories move people to take action. And people may not always remember statistics, but they'll always remember, a face or a story. So what makes a good water story, right? A good water story creates understanding, first of all. It creates, people need to, first of all, understand what you're saying. If you're saying there's a challenge somewhere, if you're saying there's an issue somewhere, there needs to be a deep understanding of that before any action can be taken. Secondly, your story needs to build empathy. I'm sure and I'm hopeful that we have communicators in the house. Myself, I've been working communicating health and water stories for a while. So I know that, building empathy is one of the key things that you must do as a water communicator. You must put your audience, transport them into your communities or your beneficiaries or whatever, wherever you're working, to make sure that they're able to feel what the communities where you work are feeling. They're able to understand how the struggles that they face and things like that. And then, of course, your story has to inspire action. For us in Africa, most of the work that we do is around advocacy. So trying to get the government to, maybe build up some infrastructure in some communities or to make things work. So inspiring action is so important, and that's why communication and advocacy must always work together, because it's not just about telling the story, it's about inspiring action and, of course, influencing policy conversations. So I have on my slide a very quick example. I'm sure that we will share the slides and you can see this in your spare time. But I have on the left slide, I have a picture, or should I say a poster that has just text on it, and it says 2.1 billion people still lack access to safely managed drinking water, and it's just the text on the screen and the text, that's all. And on the other side, I have a picture of a woman. I really wish that I could share this so that you can look at what I'm seeing. And it says, today, 1 in every 4 people on Earth cannot simply turn on a tap and trust that safe water will flow out. And I just wanted to do a little test to say this or that. Which of these posts, or if you come across any of these posts, which one would you be more likely to click, or would you be more likely to engage with, or would you feel more emotions towards? And of course, any post with a picture and a more beautifully crafted storyline or headline will inspire people, as opposed to just having a statistic slammed on a post and shared. So this is just a quick example of how you can give life to your statistics or to your report or whatever it is that you want to share, because people might not always have time or the energy to go and look at the statistic and try to crack their brains, but a story will always connect immediately. And then I have a little list, and I named that an Anatomy of a Powerful Water Story. And I have 5 points that I listed out here. Number 1, a good water story, or any story, in fact, in the development of humanitarian sector, needs to have number 1, a challenge. So what issue exists? What are the challenges? And also, of course, what is the data to back this up? I think Linda mentioned this, that there's always data. You need to show the data, but not just the data, right? Human characters, stories, and all of these accompanying things make your data come to life. Number 2, I say a human character who is affected and in what ways. So you've said 1.2 billion people on the earth do not have access to safely managed water. But who is this? Who is 1.2 billion people? Where do they live? What is happening to them? Why don't they have water? A human character embodies this story and makes it come to life. Number 3 are stakes. Why does it matter? And what does what change needs to happen, and why does this change need to happen? So it's not just about telling people, oh, this is what is happening here. It's also about telling them, why does this need to change? Why do people need to do something about this? If not, nobody really cares. You know, we're living in a very in a world, or right now, everybody is literally, you know, in a climate like Nigeria or in Africa, everybody's just fighting for their lives and trying to get by their day. So you really need to show people what the stakes are, or what will happen if change does not come, for them to be able to take action. And of course, I have here possibility, which is, you know, what can change? I mean, you said that this is the problem. You said that this thing must change. But what is the theory of change? Like, what can change if this happens, or who has the power to change this? So you say this community does not have water, but this is the potential that they have. People can go to school, children don't need to spend hours fetching water and things like that. And of course, who has the power to make this change happen? And then lastly, the action. So what do you want people to do? Do you need them to sign a petition? Do you need them to tag your policymakers? Do you need them to, you know, of course, this is where all of the target audiences come in, where you can take, oh, for communities, this is the action that you want them to take. For policymakers, this is the action you want them to take, and so on and so forth. But I think any powerful water story must have these 5 components for it to be successful. Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit about victim narratives, especially for us in Africa. We work in regions where people are, you know, under very, very precarious situations, and they do need help. And sometimes when this help comes, they often paint the picture of a victim, you know, from the side of the people who are lending the help. And so ethical storytelling is very important in a region like Africa. I mean, everywhere in the world, but particularly in Africa, where poverty levels are, you know, are higher. Ethical storytelling must start with dignity. It must start with dignity. The people who you are helping are people like you, they are people like me, and they must be treated as such. So the people in the communities are not victims, they are people, and we must tell their stories how you tell the story of someone. So we need to avoid anything that is leaning towards helplessness, you know, stereotypes, or something we call poverty lure, which is like people painting such a gory picture to, you know, evoke some type of emotion, or so. Just, you know, there's this poverty law that some organizations tend to lean towards. Does it achieve its goal? Yes, sometimes it does, but the dignity of the people are eroded in the process, and that's something that we want to avoid. And then, of course, ascension shock. You know, see a picture of a child, you know, somewhere that's not very good, and all of these kinds of things. I think it's important for us as communicators to keep in mind that these people are human beings as well. So we need to lean towards agency, you know, context, being cautious about the environment and the language and the people and their culture and all of that, and also the complexity of the issues. Sometimes the stories are not always as straightforward. I think Linda mentioned something like that. You know, sometimes it's intricate. There's a lot of things. Sorry, Sherine mentioned, you know, about the societies and how they see water and all of the issues that have the histories, and all of those things need to be taken into account when we're telling all of these stories. And of course, resilience, which Linda already spoke, you know, extensively on. So a little litmus test that I use whenever I go on the field or I'm trying to get stories is I ask myself, would I be comfortable if this story were told about me or my family? So I just want everyone to keep that in your mind, for communicators in the house, even journalists. Would you be comfortable if a story was told, if this story that you're putting together is told about your family? Is it dignifying, right? Is it feeding into stereotypes? And so by the time you ask yourself these questions, you'll be able to, you know, take a step back and look at things from a more objective and a more human angle. Yes, so there's also the issue of balancing urgency with accuracy. I know that in many water issues are always urgent issues. There will forever be urgent issues. There will forever be a crisis. But we need to avoid certain communication tactics that make these things look worse or make them exaggerated, if I can say that. So, you know, when there's droughts, when there's flooding or conflict, many times water issues are often front and center, or in times of displacement. But as communicators, we need to be on top of everything and make sure that nothing is exaggerated, there's no
Sarah, we can't hear you again. I think we lost you, or your connection just went off for a bit. Right when you
Okay,
were, oh yeah, you're back.
I'm back.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank God you can hear me now. So maybe I turned off my camera. I think that makes it better. So I was saying, I'm saying in cases of crisis, which can be found in a lot of water crisis situations, we need to avoid fear-based reporting and instead, try to make sure that we're inspiring people to action and not just inspiring them to fear. So it's our responsibility as communicators to verify the facts, use trusted sources, and explain any uncertainty. And of course, above everything else, we need to avoid sensationalism, trying to evoke emotions from people, using some kind of tactics or things like that. And then, so I also wanted to speak very briefly about, as I said before, every story has a human face, and we just need to find it. Every story has someone who's experiencing the thing that you're trying to say with some data. There's someone who is an embodiment of that data, and you need to find that person, you need to find that story, you need to find that community to make your point, to drive the story home, or to drive the issue, home. So instead of using a generic factual statement, we need to try and draw a connection between the problem and the person it's affecting, and then portray that story. So I have some examples here. In place of saying groundwater depletion is increasing, we can say, oh, how groundwater is affecting women farmers, or if there's an urban flooding, instead of saying urban flooding worsens, for example, we need to say what one family lost during the city's latest flood, things like that. And I'm sure that we that work in the field, we know all of these things, but it's just a reminder that these things actually work, and we need to keep up with these practices. I know I've seen some very beautiful stories from some of these organizations, and there are things that we need, our best practices, and we need to continue to do. So of course, nothing beats hearing from the horse's mouths. So always look for the community voices, the women, the youth, the farmers, the healthcare workers, teachers, and all of these people. They have the stories. They are the custodians of their history, and they have much more information that you can even imagine. So they are always in the best position to tell the story. I'm rounding up very soon. So I have a little checklist here, and I'm happy that this slide will be shared so that you can have this. A little checklist that I put here is called the water storytelling checklist. And I just, put together some points. Number one, so before you publish, always ask yourself, is this story accurate? Is it fair? Does it include community voices? Does it protect dignity? Does it provide context? Does it avoid stereotypes? And does it offer solutions or pathways forward? I think that if your stories can tick yes to at least a majority of this, more of these points, I think that you're on the right path to telling a very great water story. Okay, so I've talked about this, so I'm going to skip this slide. And yeah, I think I'm done. Just key takeaways. Great stories put people at the center. They balance emotion with evidence. So water stories are sometimes emotive. We have women walking far distances to get water, or we have children missing school because there's no water. They are emotive, but the sensation should not overwhelm the evidence and the facts, and there needs to be a good balance of both of them. The stories must respect dignity, as I said before. They must provide context as much as possible. I know that attention span is short these days, and sometimes people are scrolling very fast. They don't have time to read through all the details of your story and all the context. But as a communicator, this is your job, to make sure that it's attractive enough that people can read it and they're able to understand the context behind what you're putting out in a short period of time. Avoid sensationalism, as I said before, and then, of course, create understanding and action, which is the key to inspiring people to take action after they've looked at your story. So I'm happy that I was able to squeeze this in, and sorry for my network issue with the voice and the sound, but thank you for listening, and of course, the slides will be available to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm glad we could make it work despite the connection. Thank you. And like Amber said, you were indeed in your flow and the connection was almost going to cut you off again. So I'm really glad that we could get, all the very important points you had to share with us. I was taking notes, and I'm sure many other people were doing the same. I just want to echo that litmus test that you talked about. Would I be comfortable if this story was told about me? I think that is one that I will keep in mind as a journalist or someone who writes myself. And this is where I pass the word to Linda. Linda, we're ready to get our hands wet. Please walk us through the practical session for the next 20 minutes. The floor
Yeah.
is yours, Linda.
Okay, thank you, Say. And I would really like to echo what Sarah has mentioned because the next practical session will really need us to put our heads together, have that checklist that Sarah has also mentioned, and for us just to start seeing how we can be able to start creating these powerful narratives. So I will go back a little bit to this current slide that we have. Is as we have mentioned, me, Sarah, and Sherine, we have those various facts and figures that we always have. So we have a technical report which will give you several figures, and it's up to us as communicators to create the story angle and also focus on the target audiences for our story. So our current, next slide. So I want us to build a water story. So we'll take slightly about 5 minutes on this session just for us to put our heads together. But I really want to hear from you. You've heard from Sherine. You've also heard from Sarah about how we need to tell our stories. And as communicators, most of the information that we get it from reports, from presentations, from technical impact stories. So, for example, if you are assigned this story, we have this story here on our deck. This is a technical story, a technical project that we have. It's called the Water and Sanitation Output-Based Aid Fund Project. So as a summary, this project has an investment portfolio of 11.1 million US dollars, and 9 projects were financed. Commercial financing was leveraged for low-income communities, and household water connections were made available. Also, we had public water kiosks, which are public water access points, and also improved sanitation services for the people. And this project targeted underserved urban settlements. So now this is where the rubber meets the road. And I hope everyone has been closely listening to what we've been saying. So if you're assigned to tell this story, what angle would you pursue and why? Just go back to the previous slide. If you are assigned this story, what angle would you pursue and why? So I think we'll settle in about two minutes so that people can be able to write down their thoughts. After this slide, we'll do a short presentation from members on the floor so that we can be able to hear your various perspectives. So out of this slide, what I want to see is what story angle, if this was a project summary that you received today at your desk and your CEO told you, you have 30 minutes to give me a story to present to ABCD. So we have various audiences. We have journalists, we have donors, we have development partners. So if you're told to do a story based on these facts that you have, what storyline would you look at? What headline would you give your story? And lastly, who would you be your target audience? So let me repeat myself. What storyline would you look at? What headline would you give your story? And who will be your targeted audience? So I want to see, if you're given facts, how can you be able to create a story? So say we can give the audience about 2-3 minutes.
Sounds good. So get cracking for the next 2 minutes, and thereafter, just use the raise hand function if you want to respond to or if you want to speak. What's your storyline? What's the headline? And who will be your target audience based on this technical project summary on the screen? Linda, there is a chat asking that we could post the instruction in the chat. I think that will be nice also.
Okay, could you type that? What story angle? So I just posted. So just to repeat again, what story angle would you look at? What headline would you give your story? And what will be your intended audience?
Okay, great. I see people putting in their responses in the chat. Maybe you want to echo some of them, and we'll see if anyone raised the hand, and we can hear a little bit from the participants too.
Yes, I've seen quite a number of responses, and all of them are fantastic. So I'm seeing Annie B, where she mentions, I'll go for on-the-ground interview with some people in the queue at the water kiosks. Ideally, the queue is not very long, and they're both men and women fetching water. Maybe there's some entrepreneurs who have opened a water delivery business. This gives you an opportunity to explore the before and after. Fantastic response. Let me look at someone else. The audience will be the donor. The angle will be impact in someone's life. This is by Nora. So the audience is donor, the angle is impact in someone's life. So one person whose life has changed, how they found out what it has changed and what it means to them. So the headline, I no longer walk 3 hours. Oh, that's a fantastic, fantastic headline. Let me look at someone else. Let's see. Quite a number coming in. So let me look at Saddam Hussein, MD. So the headline, oops, that moved. So rivers are the lifelines of Bangladesh, yet they're fighting for survival. Keeps moving. This is a community-led initiative. That's quite long. So the conception proposal title, A Drop of Hope. This is by Fernando Jose Gomez, where the title is A Drop of Hope. The subtitle is A Single Drop of Water May Be Insignificant. Oh, they all keep shifting. Might be insignificant in a vast world, but it's also essential. This is where we will share the impact that a drop of hope can have on thousands of communities. I'm seeing people are keeping track of the conversation, bringing the aspect of hope. So you have Fiona Douglas. This is impact on community building, resilience with more time to put into community, helping each other in business. Seeing 30 others have come through. So we have Sherine, you're given. So the story angle before and after the projects, the headline, Water Easier Now, intended audience, the people who like to hope that projects are not a waste of money. So basically the public and the beneficiaries. Fantastic. Alicia, we have my angle will be on young girls. I'll also do an interview on some of the young girls and understand their aspirations, see how they observed water fetching and management in their households and what they want for their futures. So I'm saying this is actually great impact, and everyone has been taking charge and looking and taking notes on our presentation. So say, would you like for us to take some verbal responses at this time? Do we have time?
I think that will be nice. Yes, we still have some time. If you would like to speak, just put up the hand. I'm very, very impressed with how fast people are also typing. It took me quite a while to also share my angles, my headline, and my audience. But it's incredible to see that many of you are engaged and you're already using some of the insights shared by Sherine, by Sarah, and by Linda. So using the raise hand function, if you would like to speak, please just use the raise hand function and Linda will welcome you to share your thoughts. What will be your storyline? What will be your headline, your story angle, your headline, and your target audience if you have received this technical brief for a water and sanitation output-based fund project? Let's see. Does anyone want to give it a first go? Just use the raise hand function and then we would welcome you. Let's see, where do I find that? I see Samudi. Your target audience is the community, your headline, something around the number of additional school days attended by children in the community compared with before the intervention due to reduced sick leave. That's great. MD Saidam, it's quite a lot coming in. Your headline will be Lifeless River, Lost Livelihood, the fight to revive Gingiram. Your angle will be human-made impacts, sanitation and rubber dams, siltation and rubber dams on transboundary river and local fishing communities. The target will be local communities, policymakers, and transboundary water donors. Thank you for sharing, Saddam Hussein. Sivaranjini, performance over pity, shifting from a narrative of passive charity to Sri Lankan capability, showing how local community achieves strict global accountability standard. And the main headline will be Beyond the Tap, how Sri Lankan resilience meets global standards to unlock millions. And an alternative headline will be The Price of Water, from undeserved settlement to world-class execution. Sounds interesting. Global donors and investors, those looking for data-driven, successful product model. I guess that will be your audience. Thank you so much for sharing. Anne has some question, Anne has a question, and maybe this is where we also begin to take a few questions. You can put them in the chat, or you could use the raise hand function, and this you could direct to any of our speakers. Let's see, I'm hoping that we can take as many questions as we can, but let's start with Anne's question. How do you apply your speaking points in your daily work? I guess that's for you, Linda.
Yes. Every day as communicators, when we have aspects that we need to do, I saw somebody actually write this in the chat, and I felt it is very important. I didn't catch the name of the person, but he came up with an acronym named HELCH. Maybe we'll see HELCH or HELCH, which is
that was me. I think I copied it from your presentation.
Yes. And I felt that somebody said we need to walk around with this narrative, because in your daily lives, we're facing stories almost every day. You could be sitting in a presentation by one of your technical team, and you're like, okay, they've mentioned a certain fact, they've mentioned this. From my experience, I work a lot with communities on the ground. So as even Sarah alluded to. So when you're out to collect a story, you first need to ask yourself, what is the human angle to this story? And then which emotions do we want to bring out in these emotions? Yeah. So we put the people before the project, and also having the aspect of hope and action. I think for me, I always have to look at the end before the beginning. What story do I want to bring that will bring hope and will bring hope to these people, and also ensure that it facilitates action for further partnerships from development partners, and also action from civil societies, and also action as us for behavioral change. Because as Sherine mentioned, behavioral change, you're taking a shower for 30 minutes instead of 10 minutes. So when you're telling your story, will it be able to have action at the end of it? Will it be able to have behavioral change? And how will this be told out through the local voice? So I always seek to implement that within my daily lives when I'm interacting with the communities. Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing, Linda. Sherine, Sarah, this question is also for you, and we'd love to hear from you. How do you implement this in your daily life or your daily work? How do you apply your speaking points in your daily work? Who wants to go? Sherine, Sarah?
I can go.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, the speaking points in my work. I think I am lucky to kind of be obsessed with water. I was once in my travel, when I started traveling in Europe a lot, people call my last name very similar to water because it's El-Wattar in Arabic. But people even used Shay when you said that it was a bit, it sounded a bit like El-Wattar, And someone came to me one day and they were like, "Your last name is Water. Do you know that?" And I was like, "Oh, well, what a match made, perfectly." But I guess it never left me, that comment, because I was like, "Oh, wow." Like it felt like I was made for this. And then the way I apply it is that, of course, my work is always in the environment, in the climate, environment, and water. So I am positioned well to talk about this all the time, but I'm always also making sure to be the devil's advocate on the discussion tables and the policy discussions, wherever I am, to always remind them of the lens of like the human side of water and the connection beyond the technical and the numbers. I like to ask the questions that I learned from my masters, but I carry them forward. I always ask, whose knowledge and whose expertise? So when I read any piece of information related to water, I ask myself, whose knowledge is this? Who figured this knowledge out, and whose expertise is this? What is being perpetuated by this? And when I ask myself this question, it always allows me to never take things as they are and to question them deeper. So I guess my mental process is to always ask myself whose knowledge and whose expertise, and my communication self is to always speak my thoughts out to the people I'm part of a discussion for. So that's how I do it in my day-to-day.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Sarah, can we also welcome some quick comments from you just before we wrap up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
I think Sherine and Linda have really said what I wanted to say. For me, another thing I try to keep in mind is to build the connection between water and all other things. So water and health, water and poverty, water and environment. Water is such a central part of everything, that there's a connection to everything. And so giving people that perspective helps me to be able to drive home my point and to say, hey, this is not just about water. This is about people's health. This is about education. This is about livelihoods, and all the things that are connected to water. So yeah, I think that's just another thing I want to say.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Linda, I know you have a few more slides to go. Can I give you 2 minutes to run through them and then we wrap up?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Say. I just actually want to thank everyone for the various headlines that they've given. Your presentation had excellent ideas, and what struck me was that there were so many different responses that all the stories were valid. So maybe I'll just skip. If we could move to the slide with key takeaways. Yeah, so that I can be able to conclude on my presentation is that when we're given our project facts, the projects don't change. The facts actually do not change. sometimes the audience will change, and that is how we're able to better phrase our stories. And that's why, as storytellers, we must understand who we are speaking to. And this has also been gladly said by Sarah. So a key takeaway is that facts tell us what happened. The stories will explain why it matters, and understanding the audience determines how we tell it. And this put together is what creates an impactful water communication. So as global communicators, the next slide is everything that we experience as communicators is just not unique to our area, because people seem to connect with authentic voices. And this has really been reiterated also by Sarah. So as lessons for key global communicators is we need to put people before the projects. We need to lead with human impact. We need to pair our stories with evidence. We need to let the community speak for themselves. And we need to also focus on dignity. You know, when we mention, would you be comfortable with this story being told about you? So we need to showcase their challenges, but also showcase the resilience of the stories. And we need to also tell stories that inspire action. And as communicators, this is our responsibility to not simply just report what has happened, but we also need to help people understand why it matters. So my last slide, I'd like to leave, next slide, with a few, just two factors here. We have had presentations from all the relevant presenters today. But what I've actually come to see is we've all converged on a few points. And for me, this is what I've also seen, is that powerful water stories are not just about the infrastructure or the statistics. They're about people, they're about resilience, about dignity of the people, and the everyday realities that communities face. So as communicators, our role is not only to tell stories that people remember. It is to tell stories that are, one, accurate, are ethical, and are capable of inspiring action. So I'd like to repeat the last sentence. As communicators, our role is not only to tell stories that people will remember, it is also to tell stories that are accurate, are ethical, and capable of inspiring action. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of my presentation. And that is the power of a compelling water story. So in case you'd like to get in touch with me, that is my last slide that you have there. You can drop me an email or also find me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I see the applause. I see the love. I see all the emojis on the screen. Thank you. This has been an exciting session. Thank you, Linda Gwada. Thank you, Sherine El-Wattar. And thank you, Sarah Bitrus Nuhu, for this, not just, it's been very practical. Looking at the chat alone and the story ideas that have been prepared, it seems like you guys can just go out there and start writing. So this has been very hands-on, and I really do appreciate it. And yes, Sumbul is reminding me, an all-women panel. Love it. I also love it. Many thanks to the Grundfos Foundation for making this possible. We are really, really grateful. And to you, the participants, for your questions, for being active, for turning on your cameras, and for just being very engaged. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Before you leave, I hope that you'll take a few seconds to fill out the feedback survey that will pop up on your screen. Immediately you leave, you'll see this popping up on your screen. It's also in the chat, so you can also go in and fill. And we're not just asking you to fill this, we see it. This were the feedback from the last session where many of you thought it was good, but we also took, some of the specific recommendations, what to improve upon in subsequent sessions. And this is how we can improve. So thank you so much for taking a few seconds to fill out the post-event survey, and we will do the best we can to reflect this in subsequent session. Our next session is on Tuesday, the 9th of June, same time, and we will be looking at strategic water communication for policy influence. If you've heard of green water and blue water time, where we distill all of this. So from all the policy, from all the policy language, how can you as journalists, as communicators, as conveners, understand the power of strategic water communications. Join us next Tuesday, 9th of June, as we distill that. Thank you. This is where I say thank you again for such inspiring session. Really do appreciate that you've taken out your time. And we will call it a wrap here. The recording will be shared with you all via email, as well as the slides, including the slide from Sarah. And we just want to say thank you so much. My name is Sheifumi Adebote, and until the next session, go out there, get your hands wet, make a splash. You have all that you need to start writing, so why not? And if you share your reflections on LinkedIn, feel free to tag World Water Week. We'll be happy to engage with all of those posts. Between now and then, I look forward to reading your stories. Take care, you all, and bye for now.